And we're live. Woo! It is Wednesday, March 15th. How is it Wednesday, March 15th? I don't know, but it is. It's half of March is already over. Welcome to the Closing Show Live, and thanks for joining us. We have a really special Closing Show Live today. We are going to celebrate the new launch of our very latest and greatest State of Proposals. What is the State of Proposals? You might be watching and maybe don't even know. So every year we launch a state of proposals. We look at over 1 million proposals in our systems, or in our system, in our software. And we look at all the intelligence that it tells us, all the amazing tips of how to close more deals with better proposals. So thanks for joining us today. The Closing Show Live is a weekly live show. So if you've got the ping, don't know what this is, no worries. It's a weekly live show featuring the people of Proposify, and that's what we're doing today. We're featuring the people of Proposify who created the State of Proposals, sales stars in the trenches, and revenue leaders. The Closing Show Live is hosted by me, Nadia Milani, VP of Marketing at Proposify. Every week, we discuss the challenges we're facing and the no BS lessons we've learned so you can crush your close rates, even in the economic situation that we're in today. So the Closing Show Live is brought to you by Proposify. Get control and visibility into your proposal process. Start your 14-day free trial at proposify.com. So some housekeeping today. Sometimes the live will freeze. It happens on LinkedIn once in a while. Press pause and then play again. A lot of people ask if they can get a recording. All you got to do is go or click on the same link you joined to join the live or attend the live, and there will be a recording there that you can watch. And today, just drop where you're joining us from. So, drop where you are joining us from today. And there's already some questions in the chat here. 1 million in total, or it's from 1 year. So it's 1 year, and it's about 1 million sent proposals in the system. So thanks, Aaron, for asking that question. To win it, we're also giving away some prizes today. One of 3 Proposify swag packs that'll include some Closing Show Live swag. All you got to do to win is ask some questions. So some people are getting a head start or asking some questions in the chat, which is awesome. And by the way, I am not 100% today, so feeling a little bit under the weather. So if I do have to, sometimes I cough, so I'll just mute when that happens. And my kids are home because it's March break, so one of them just might join in on the fun. So if that happens, you can just say hi, and maybe they'll say hi too. But let's get right to it. So just like I said, our biggest and baddest state of proposals is here. We're dropping the latest secrets revealed from 1 million Proposify proposals over the last year, so you can win more deals. It's all happening today, right now. So we have Scott Tower, Director of Sales, who will share the juiciest close-worthy tips. We have Tamara Simon, Customer Success Design Lead, who's going to uncover proposal design secrets you need to know right now. And we've got the famous Jennifer Faulkner, Director of Brand and Communications, who will reveal what not to write in a proposal. She's an amazing writer. She actually wrote most of the State of Proposals, which is awesome. Oh, we got some people. We got Hayward, California. We've got St. Louis, Missouri. Awesome. We've got Cancun. Nice. Are you on vacation, or is that are you there, Mike? Or is that where you live? That's awesome. We got Memphis, Tennessee. Hi, Barbara. Okay, sorry. Back to this. My intro. I'm also going to ask Scott, Tamara, and Jennifer some really tough questions, like why do we even need to put effort into proposal? Why proposals and not quoting software? What's the difference? All that fun stuff. So we're also going to be dropping the link of State of Proposals in the chat, so you can download the latest and greatest. So we have our BDR extraordinaire Hunter in the background. He's amazing, and he's going to drop that in the chat. Shout out to Jen, Jordan, Caitlin, Paige, and Tamara on our team for putting the State of Proposals together. So everybody, huge round of applause for the team that put this together, because it was a lot of work, and I'm so happy it's here. So let's get right to it. So let's bring everybody in. Hi, Jennifer, Scott, Tamara. How's it going?
Howdy, doing well.
Nice. Awesome. So we've got Scott Tower, Director of Sales. We've got Tamara, our Customer Success Design Lead, and Jennifer Faulkner, Director of Brand and Communications at Proposify. So we're going to get right to a lot of the questions. We have some, I think, already in the chat. I think I answered one of them. But if you have a question today, please ask us, because we're going to answer the questions live, which is great. And if you do, you also get entered to win one of 3 amazing Proposify swag packs. You can already see some of them on social. People are posting, which is great. So Scott, we're going to start with you. We're going to start with the first. Oh, by the way, I forgot to share the State of Proposals. So let me just do that. Let me share my screen. I don't even know if I can do that. One second here. No, we're going to actually do it we're going to maybe do it a little bit after. We're going to drop the link so you can actually see it. And then I'm going to show it a little bit after. But State of Proposals, they really do uncover amazing tips. But we're going to start with some of the tips that Scott read through it. So he's revealed or has seen a bunch of amazing tips. So let's start with you, Scott. What are the top tips you have for the audience from the State of Proposals, the latest State of Proposals?
Awesome. Well, super excited to be here for this. It's my second time on the show, so see if I can live up to the first time. I've got three main tips from today. Some of them are they'll tie to the data that's in the report. So for those of you that might be using a tool or familiar with Proposify, you might already be doing these, but stuff I see all the time that is getting missed or the ball's getting dropped a little bit. So my first tip, if you've ever taken any Sandler courses or heard of Sandler sales training, I'm kind of stealing it from them. And they have this saying that says, slow down to speed up. So what do I mean by that? We know from the data that is in the report that half the proposals that are sent in under 20 minutes. That's all fine and great. Creating and sending the proposal quickly is important to get it out to your buyer. But I think what is most important is before you even get to that step, it's laying the groundwork to send the proposal. And what I mean by that is you have to make sure you do proper discovery, understanding the root cause of your prospect's problem. That allows you to specifically address that in your proposal. And if we're doing that, I think we're going to see high success rates. And we know from the data that 45% of the proposals that are won are actually won in less than 24 hours of opening. So my interpretation on that data is that in those cases, the sellers have done a really good job of discovery, tying the pain that they're uncovering to the value of what they're selling in the proposal. And that's getting them to be able to actually close really quickly. So again, tip number one would be slow down to speed up, do proper discovery, and feed that into your proposal.
Amazing. So slow down to speed up. So the biggest thing there is like as a salesperson, so if you're in sales watching this or listening to this, so it's really about doing all of your discovery, knowing what the value is and summarizing that in a really concise way before you plop it into a proposal. And you don't really want to plop it in. You want to be able to be very intentional about what you're putting in based on all the conversations that you've had. So I love that. Anything else that you uncovered from reading the latest and greatest State of Proposals?
Yeah, of course. So my second tip is always try to review your proposal with the prospect before sending it over. It kind of plays into tip number one of slowing down to speed up. Sometimes you get really excited and you want to like get that proposal in front of your prospect because, hey, you want it to close. And I think by actually slowing down to get that meeting on the calendar, ideally with what some people might call their economic buyer, or the easiest way to think of it is just the decision maker, the person who's going to decide. That allows you to do a couple of things. One, allows you to address questions that might come up from them immediately, absorbing some of the information in the proposal because you're there on the conversation, like having a conversation with them. Number two, it might help you realize that there's something that you've missed the mark on, and it allows you to adjust that before you send it over. And number three, it typically just cuts down on back and forth that you're going to have once it's sent because you've addressed a lot of the upfront questions. So I know what everyone's probably thinking, oh, that's great, but I don't get in front of the ultimate decision maker all the time. Chances are you probably have a champion or at least a main contact that you're dealing with. So try to review it with them if you can't get access to the ultimate decision maker. And sort of my bonus tip is if it's just not in the realm of possibilities to have that conversation, take a software like a Vidyard or anything that you can use to record a video, share the proposal in your video and essentially walk through that same conversation you'd have with the decision maker in the video and fire that over as on the same time as you send the proposal over. So that would be my second tip. And hey, how does this, like, why do people care about this in relation to the data? One of the things that we know is that there's going to be revisions with proposals. So I think number one, reviewing it together, you know that, all right, I've at least addressed the immediate questions that came up. So I've almost done like a pre-revision before I've even sent it because I've got feedback. And then once I send it, I should expect that I'm probably going to have some questions come up. I'm gonna have to make some tweaks to that to further clarify or get more specific in the proposal. But that's a good thing. So I guess what I'm saying is doing that review in person just gives you a head start in that. And we see that the data suggests that if you have at least one revision on your proposal, you're actually going to have a 31% higher close rate than if there's no changes made to that initial proposal.
So awesome. So it sounds like there's a little bit of like tip number one. Sometimes it just takes a little bit more legwork and before the proposal is like being finalized. And I love that idea of taking that extra step with the champion, the internal champion that you're working with, because I personally have been sent proposals and then it's been copied. There's other stakeholders being copied. And I've been the champion and have noticed that there's been, just things that I didn't really agree to, or it was like, it just sounded different when it was put on the proposal. So I love having that pre-meet. It could take longer because I know everybody just wants to get it out as quickly as possible. But if you have that additional, meeting with that champion, you can say, hey, is this everything that we discussed? And I love that because that can actually lead to a faster close at the end. So amazing. Are there any other tips? Do you have any other tips, or was that it?
No, I've got one more. I mean,
Okay,
I've probably got a lot more, but
before you say it, I just want to say hi to Jeff. So Jeff is one of our customers. He's here. So shout out to Jeff who's joining us today from Inspect Point. Love it that you're here. Thanks for joining us. Sorry. Tip number 3 from Scott Tower.
Sounds good. All the way from New York, Jeff. So just in New York last month. Awesome. Love it there. My third tip is stay politely persistent. So what I mean by this is I think one of the biggest mistakes we can make as sellers is we send the proposal and kind of let our foot off the gas and assume the work is done. Hey, they've got the information, so the prospect will make the decision from there. I think that it's important to at least maintain the same level of activity you have on that account or on that prospect, and in some cases even increase it. Because at that point you have good momentum. You've obviously established that there's a potential to work together with this prospect. And I think you want to keep that momentum going all the way to getting, establishing that, yes, we are going to move forward with a relationship here. And the reality is there's just a lot going in everyone's world. So you want to stay top of mind. If you're not top of mind, you can easily kind of get put in the pile of things to do and people go on and start doing other things. If you're anything like Proposify's world, we're in a competitive environment as well. So you have other folks bidding for the same business. Well, if someone happens to just have the timing of being the last person they talk to and things of that nature, that can put you behind the 8 ball. So again, staying top of mind is really, really valuable. Examples of this would be just what I call value touches. So it sounds kind of weird in a vacuum, but it's essentially saying, okay, based on what we've talked about, how could I add value to help the prospect either solve the problem that they're trying to solve with looking at our solution, or just help them make the decision? Because as a buyer, there's always risks in the decisions that you're making and purchases that you're making. And you want to take the approach of helping them make that decision and make it an easy one. So it could be like sending a case study over that's relevant to them, social proof from someone in their industry that, a peer that's made a similar decision, and things that they have learned from that, things of that nature. And you can actually automate some of this process. Like whether you use like an email client or you use a proposal tool, typically you can automate follow-ups. And we actually see through the data that if you schedule reminders or follow-ups with your prospect at the proposal sent, they're actually 50% more likely to close on that proposal. So step 1 is making sure you're staying politely persistent. Following up with value is step 2. Step 3 is make it easy for yourself and automate some of that process so you don't actually have to put a bunch of brain power into every touch point.
Love it. So concise. I love those quick tips. Heidi asks, how quickly after initially sharing the proposal do you recommend following up? I don't want to come across as pushy. It's a good question because we all know how we feel about pushy salespeople.
Oh, you're muted, Scott.
I don't know how I got muted, but I was probably sharing too many tips. I don't know. So great question. I think the first thing that runs through my mind is probably depends on your typical sales cycle length. If I have a really quick sales cycle, week to 2 weeks, then I'm following up probably next day at the latest, versus if I know it's a longer sales cycle, maybe it's months or even, closer to an enterprise year-long sales cycle, then I'm going to be a little more strategic, and I might put some more time in between there. I think it's good, again, if you have that conversation with your prospect, reviewing the proposal before you send it, you can agree with them on when you're going to follow up. Hey, this is what I'm going to do next, and ask them what they're going to do next with that proposal. So then if you have context of what they're going to do, it allows you to follow up at a good time that makes sense. Spoiler alert, also tools like Proposify can actually give you insights and analytics into when someone's viewing your proposal. I think that's really juicy stuff, where you can then plan to follow up based on when that proposal is being viewed, and you can have some context around where they're viewing in the proposal, which allows you to sort of steer your conversation that you can have once you pick up the phone.
Nadia, you're muted now.
I love when this happens. I usually don't hit mute, but because my kids are home, I am hitting mute today. So we're going to ask one more question to Scott, and then we're going to go on to design. So from Jeff, he asks, Scott, do you think the data suggests a separate meeting to discuss pricing the proposal is more effective than what I do? What I do is show the pricing proposal at the end of the software demo and then set soft follow-up, but not a hard meeting time date. Thoughts?
So I'm a big fan. Again, our sales cycles are 30 to 60 days. So it's not a big lead up to getting to a point where you're discussing the commercials and things of that nature. In our world, I like to say, like, you want to share pricing early and often, because you don't want any, you don't want misalignment. So our pricing is advertised on our website. We're not really hiding anything when we have conversations. So I say if you're sharing that initial pricing right after the demo, that's fine. I'm not sure that you want to say, hey, this is the final proposal, because in my mind, depending on who you're speaking with, there may be follow-up conversations to that. But I think it's a good practice to get the pricing out there early, start to validate if that's in budget, in range with what they had in mind for the project, and then make sure that you actually understand who can say yes to that pricing, and have a conversation with them with your final proposal, to get their verbal approval before you're just kind of sending it and hoping that it gets approved.
So awesome. And so if you're just joining us, we shared the link to the newest, latest, greatest stated proposals. It's at proposify.com/stated proposals. It looks like this. I'm going to share my screen. I've never done this before, but now I'm going to figure it out. So there it is. It's fantastic. And it shows how to make every single deal a closed deal, or really try to do that as much as possible. We take you through how to create, what to think through when you're sending, what to think through when you're tracking, and all the analytics, what the analytics showed in our proposal software, and just some tips and tricks on how to close. Some of them already been shared by Scott, but go to proposify.com/stated proposals to get yours today. So I'm going to stop share and on to the next part of proposal or stated proposals day. So I'm going to bring Tamara on. Hi, Tamara, you're already on. But I wanted to ask you, so you're the design lead at Proposify. So I would love for you to discuss some, just like 3 proposal design don'ts and maybe like some proposal design do's. Would love to know, because you've seen so many proposals over the years. And I just love to know, like, what do you think about when you're designing your proposal? Like, how do you think through branding? How do you think through just tactics and what to add and what not to add? Would love your perspective.
Yeah. Well, first of all, hi, everybody. Great to be here. I'm excited to dive into everything that's encompassing in the state of proposals and the points that Nadia touched on. I think to kick off, let's do the 3 proposal don'ts. These are things that we've seen throughout the last year and things that we touch on in the state of proposals, which focuses more on the solutions for these things. But these are things to be mindful of and aware of when you are creating your proposal. So the first one, don't repeat important information throughout your proposal unless it can be automated. The first thing you might be wondering is, how does this tie in with design? Well, copy is so integrated with the design, and it's something that we want to work with clients with so much from the get-go, because it does determine layout and everything else that follows. So back to this point, this is really important because human error is just real. It happens to all of us. And we want to try to limit this as much as possible going forward in your proposal. So areas like your investment, your client details, areas of your scope of work, things that are so important and can really make or break the close, they're so important to get right from the beginning. So just try to be concise and don't repeat those details over and over unless you can automate it. So if you do have a proposal software, access to that resource, something that solves this is things like variables, things that can be automatically filled in. And that way you lose the stress of, oh shoot, I forgot on page 4 that I mentioned my client's company. It's so embarrassing if you send a proposal off and it has a different client's company in the middle of the paragraph. So we want to try to avoid all that as much as possible. On this, I'll end with a tip from our customer success team. So we've seen them do this a lot with their own clients, is creating what we like to call a stop page. Essentially, this is just like a checklist of items that sales reps can look at from beginning to end of the proposal. And they need to complete this entire checklist before they send the proposal off to their prospect. It helps with error so much. Before sending it, they delete the page from their proposal and it's good to go. So that is a hot tip that we like to pass around as much as possible.
Love that. Repetition is typically good in the sales cycle, but not in a proposal. So, and if you need to repeat it over and over and over again, try to automate it through something called variables that automatically will repeat something important throughout the proposal. Love it. Any other tips, Tamara?
Yeah. So my next one here is don't overshare. Length of proposals is so important to consider. And we actually say in our state of proposals, the average winning proposal was 12 pages last year and 7 sections. So you've got to be really mindful. You've got, say, about 12 pages to work with. I'm going to say at least 5 of those are going to be the meatier proposals. So like your scope of work, your investment, things that are crucial and things that you can't necessarily cut back on. So really you have a handful of other pages to work with to present yourself as a company and sell yourself to your prospects. So be very mindful of how you use those additional pages. One example I'll throw out is an about page. Everyone likes to include this, but it's really, really hard sometimes for people who are excited about their company to be able to pare that down to just one page. But all we need to do is have a snapshot of how awesome you are. So focus on highlights like an about video for your company or testimonials or awards, just the high level things that get your prospect excited about you. It's good to be mindful that by this stage, your prospect probably already knows so much about you. So really, it's just a reminder. And then on top of that, if they do need to pass the proposal around internally, then people who don't necessarily know about your company, this is a good high-level overview of who you are and what you can offer. So yeah, keep your clients engaged. Don't overshare. You already have a website. Your proposal does not need to be a copy of that.
Love it. So there is definitely TMI in proposal design. So don't overshare specifically about yourself. Don't make it all about you. Make it about the customer. Don't overshare, especially on your About Us page. Love it. Any don'ts? Sorry, is this do's or don'ts? This is.
I'm in the don't section, but I'm throwing do's in the middle of it.
Are there any more don'ts before we move on to what we should be including from a design perspective?
Yeah, I'll do one more don't, and it's a quick one. So it's don't design your proposal using your client's brand guidelines. It's kind of a weird one, but we see it a surprising amount. So what people get excited about is trying to make their proposal look like their client's brand. So they might go on their client's website, pull colors and assets and put it into the proposal. The reason that I say to steer away from this is it's just confusing. So you're trying to bring your brand forward and sell yourself to your prospect. You're not trying to share their brand with them. It just doesn't make sense. It's too much. So try to pare that back. There's other ways to personalize your proposal and be engaging without going to that extent. And ways I would suggest do that is like the client logo on the cover page, addressing them personally in an introduction letter, having a your challenges page, show that you've heard your client and that you really do understand what you need to solve for them. So there's other ways to be personal with still being your brand forward.
Love it. So, so now we're going to move on to like the actual do. So we now know like what not to do. So some quick hits of like what should people think about when creating their proposals from a design perspective. Some do's, Tamara.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say the number one do is use a template. It's so important to establish a master template from the very beginning. And the main reason for this, not only will it save you time up front for any of those repetitive kind of sections, but it'll make everything so consistent. And consistency is really key to build trust and showcase professionalism when you're pitching to a prospect. So using a template is our number one proposal do.
And we have lots of templates too. So we have a lot of free templates to get started from. So if you ever want to try using Proposify, you can do that so with a 14-day trial. And there's a lot of templates already established and built in the software, which is very helpful in getting started really quickly. Any other do's, Tamara?
Yeah, so the next one, you'll hear us say this year after year, but it just remains so important and it keeps popping up. Use imagery to support the copy in your proposal. So we saw last year that 82% of winning proposals actually had images in them. And it's just an amazing way to keep your clients engaged. Just think how you don't want to read a document yourself that's 12 pages long of just copy. You need ways to break this up and pull out hierarchy, make it really engaging for your client to go through. I will also add, because whenever I bring this up, people say like, oh, stock photos. But I feel like that's a really old mentality now. There's some really, really amazing stock photos available, even on free websites, that show a lot of diversity and they're atmospheric. So maybe it's showing people within their industry working. There's lots of ways to get great stock imagery throughout your proposal, or choose a theme that you want to elaborate on. So if you're in sustainability, maybe you have a nature image on every page, just something consistent and engaging. So that's really important one.
Love it. Do you have any befores and afters? I'd love to see like what's like a good proposal from a design perspective, and some like what's an after Love to see some of those examples. So Tamara's going to show right now what's kind of like too simple potentially from a design perspective, and then what's probably a good design for proposal, and maybe why it's important to have more design elements versus non-design elements. Over to you, Tamara.
Yeah, so if you're sick of hearing me talk, this is a good representation of what I've been saying. So this is a fake company. I don't want to use anyone's real proposal information, but this is something we see that's very, very typical. So something I touched on was repeating important information. A lot of times if you're using Word or something like that, you've got to make it red to make sure people don't miss it, little things like that. And this isn't a personal attack on anyone. If your proposal looks like this, you are not alone. We see this all the time. But just what I was touching on, just very copy heavy, not overly interesting to scroll through. Room for error when your table doesn't auto-calculate and you're relying on the rep to do the math there. And that's about it. And then, of course, the old printing, signing, scanning, emailing. Try to avoid all that. So that's a good example of a before, one that we very commonly see.
Love it. And then so let's look at a good proposal design.
All right. So here is what an after would potentially look like for this company, golden.io. Lots of imagery. This is a proposal example. So all my variables are filled in for my client and myself. You're going to see brand consistency, which is really important. Another thing to shout out is types of sections. There's a section in the state of proposals all about this. So we get asked all the time, what sort of section should I include? Make sure to read up on that. Just a nice, concise about section. You can play video, include testimonials, shout out to your team. There's an interactive investment page. My cat has decided to join us. Sorry if you can hear him in the background. And this is something we call client forms, which are super important to include as well. They're a really awesome way to get administrative details out of the way from the get-go. Definitely something to consider if that works for you. And then e-signatures.
So awesome. So this was like a designed purpose. Like you would have helped somebody create this, correct?
If they were real, I had to use a fake client for confidentiality reasons, but very similar. So I would work with a client to create a product that looked something like this.
Awesome. So there's like the free templates. So there's like free templates you could use where you can like automate all the information. And then there's designs. This is like a design service that you helped like a client. So if you can't do it or you want to make it more branded, that's how it would look like, which is awesome. So you talked a lot about copy. So I'm going to segue into writing and like how like writing, why it's important to write a good proposal. So I am so excited that Jen's here because she's one of the best writers I've worked with in my career. So I would love to ask you, Jen, Director of Brand and Communications at Proposify. So how do you write a good proposal? What should you be thinking about? Tamara talked a lot about not including too much information, not putting too much into the About Us section. But what are other things that need to be considered when creating a proposal that's more likely to close?
So the big things that that I see that miss the mark, and in a previous life I wrote a lot of proposals as well, is people don't focus on the client or the customer, as Tamara pointed out. You get these proposals and it's all about the company. And while that's important, you don't need to know, as Tamara also mentioned, like every single detail about them. The website does a lot of that. What you need to talk about is how you're going to solve the customer's problem. And that doesn't always come through. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is it's not always the most qualified company that wins a deal. It's the most persuasive. And I think we've all been on the other side of that, when you find out a company has chosen somebody else and you're just like, oh my God, why? Like, we're way smarter and cuter and, tastier or whatever. But it's really that other company persuaded the prospect that they were cuter and smarter and tastier or whatever it is. So you really need to be persuasive. You need to keep the customer your prospect at the focus and demonstrate that you understand their problem and that you have the solution for that problem. And
that's
sometimes
that's how you become persuasive. You become persuasive by figuring out what is the problem you're solving. And the one that can answer that the best, I think, wins. And it's not about just highlighting all the services you're providing. This is the service. No, it's about like, this is what we defined as a problem. Lots of what Scott was talking about in discovery. This is the problem that you've highlighted. This is how we are going to solve it. So love that, Jen.
And also that because I know I've found it annoying when I've received a proposal and I'm like, did they even listen to anything I said in terms of my needs? So you really need to demonstrate that you understand their problem and that you have a specific solution for them. Don't just throw everything at them that you have, because it really doesn't feel personalized. And that's another thing. You should personalize the proposal again. I also think that, and this is a big myth and it just irritates me every time I hear about it, is that people think that if you're in B2B sales, that we shut off our humanity. We don't have a sense of humor. We don't have any emotions. Somehow we go to work and we just make decisions like robots. It's just not true. So it's not just B2C that you can use emotion. You should everybody makes their decision based on emotion, and then they use logic to rationalize it afterwards. So you need to use emotion, and it's just different emotions depending on the situation. There's a age-old copywriting trick called PAS, P-A-S. It's problem, agitate, solution. And the greatest example of these I love are those commercials that you see on TV that'll show like, oh my God, I don't know how to use this type of plastic wrap, right? And so before they get the cool plastic wrap is black and white, and the person's like fumbling and stuff's falling out of the kitchen cupboards and they're cutting themselves and oh my God. So they presented the problem of the plastic wrap. then they agitate it. So they just push on it. But in those commercials, it's hilarious because they go crazy. Like your kitchen is falling apart because you don't have the proper plastic wrap dispenser. Then all of a sudden, in full color and glory, is whatever this magical plastic wrap solution that's always going to come out of the box smoothly, and it's going to wrap everything tightly, and your food's going to be fresh. So you should keep that in mind when you're writing your proposal as well, is present the problem so you know what it is. Push on it just a little bit to remind them of the risks of not solving that problem, like what the bad things are going to happen. Don't go too far. Don't doomsday them. And then, ta-da, present your solution. So that's where you can really bring emotion into things as well. And remembering, like to quote Simon Sinek, is to answer the question why. Why should they choose your company? Why should they choose your solution? Why shouldn't they choose the competition? Why should they choose you when your price might be a little bit different or more, I guess, than the competition?
I would sign on your proposal any day, especially if it concluded the video of that infomercial for. I would be like, signed. I love this. I love this proposal. So some really good tips there. So PAS, PAS, is a really great way of structuring the copy and just what you're going to be putting into the proposal. But again, it's really about answering that why and the value that you're bringing, and bringing that sales process, all the conversations that you've had with that particular prospect, and adding that into the proposal. So I love that. Any other additional tips that you want the viewers or audience to remember about what to do when writing the proposal?
Yeah, don't use overly technical language or jargon unless you really know. Like if you're, let's say you're software or doing something super technical, and the only people who are going to look at this proposal are people who understand that level of technical details. Otherwise, you're going to lose them and you're going to exclude them. Jargon, first of all, jargon is one of those things that people use to make themselves seem smarter than they are, and people see through that. And it also excludes people. Jargon is exclusive language, and excluding language, I should say. Like if people don't understand your little inside baseball terms about your particular industry, they're just going to feel left out and you're not connecting with them. So watch the jargon and don't get too technical on things. There's another place for that. And the other thing I'll say, which we're probably going to get into this, is you may be listening to me and thinking like, well, I don't need to include all that information because I already talked with my lead, my prospect. But you don't know who that they need to show internally, and then the proposal can help you sell. So if you provide all that information, then you're helping your champion sell it to, if there's internal people that they have to run it by. So it's really worthwhile putting all that in. And I'll just say, to back up Tamara's point about templates, some of this stuff you can just store. If you have great proposal software by some company like Proposify, you can store some of those things in your content library and then bring them out so you don't have to rewrite them, and just personalize the appropriate sections to make the customer feel like you've created a bespoke solution for them.
Love it. So that is a really good point. And I don't know, I don't feel like it's talked about enough, but jargon will exclude your customer and prospect. So I love that tip. Andrew asks, I used to work for IT cloud solutions,
Yeah.
ESPAS, and so it was highly technical. But I think for a certain audience, it makes sense. But Andrew asks, if you can't get away from tech terms, how do you handle that?
Maybe if you think it's going to be a mix of people, I would include a glossary, like add a section to your to your proposal and link to it. Like maybe there's a glossary there, especially if you think it's going to be a combination of people who are viewing the proposal. Like, maybe it's some people in engineering who are going to see it and totally get all that technical, or maybe it's going to be somebody like me who's just going to be like, just fix it. Like, I don't care what it's called, just fix it. So sometimes including a glossary, or what you could do is create almost like a section that is like the tech specs on it. But really what you're selling is the solution, not necessarily all the ins and outs. So that's where you can get into more detail in another part of the proposal or in a separate document.
Love that. Glossary. I don't know if I've seen that too often, but that's a good hack for highly technical solutions and services. Okay, so rapid fire questions. I'm going to ask a group question. I don't know who wants to answer, but whoever wants to answer first, go ahead. So why proposal and just not like an invoice or a quote? This is something that has for some reason come up a lot in the last week. Personally, like directly being asked to me, like, why do I need a proposal with 7 sections, and why can't I just send out a quote or an invoice? Who wants to answer that question?
I can pop in with the one that probably relates most to design. So I feel like Jen and Scott would have a different approach. My first thought is that you want to stand out to your competitors. My best analogy here is think about you have a pile of 50 resumes. 95% of them are 3 to 5 pages of copy done in Word. That 5% included a cover letter. They added some color, maybe a headshot, a nice 1-page CV. Like just mentally put yourself there and think, who are you going to gravitate towards? And I think proposals work a lot in the same way. So if you add that extra oomph and you sell your company in your proposal, you're already like light years ahead of the competition if they're only sending in a quote.
Oh, you're muted, Nadia.
Again, I can't believe it. I will learn from this. This will be the last time I hit my mute button, I promise. So Scott, just curious what your thoughts are on why a proposal and not like an invoice or quoting.
Yeah, I think if you're selling regardless if it's product or service, but something of high value, and that's probably a little bit subjective, but anytime you get into a B2B sales process, a lot of times you're looking at multiple people being involved. I think the latest data says it's like 6 to 10 people, a lot of buying groups essentially that are looking at purchasing. So in that case, I think it's important to have a proposal because you need to add context around the quote. The quote is typically just pricing, whereas context around the quote is the proposal, all the value props tied to the pricing. Why should we do this? How are you solving the problem? Like, here's the value for you. And that's communicated in the proposal, because the likelihood of you getting in front of all 6 to 10 people is really low. So you want to make sure that you can communicate that in other ways. And I think sometimes folks just think proposal is like the end document that has to be the thing that finalizes, like, yeah, we're going to do this. In reality, it can look a few different ways. And from my experience talking to sellers, lots of times there's decks or other presentations used earlier in the cycle. To me, that is part and parcel to like a proposal, because you're usually using that to help describe and showcase value of what you're selling. So, hey, just because the proposal doesn't have to be the document that's signed or sealed, delivered in that sense. Some people have a contracting phase, but it's that document that's communicating value.
Love it. Any final thoughts, Jen, on that?
No, I would echo all of that. Like, you can't, what you want to do is not compare apples to apples. You want to be like, oh, this is an orange, or this is a fancier apple. You can't do that with just a white piece of paper with numbers on it. There's no way you can differentiate yourself other than by price. And we all know you can't win a price war unless you're like Walmart or something. So you really want to build in, again, use that emotion, be persuasive. You can't do that with just like a price on a blank piece of paper or, in a Word doc. So it's really important and it's helpful. And it also, I was just going to say, it also gives the prospect an idea of what it's going to be like to work with you, right? Because if you put this much care and effort and experience into just the buying experience, like, that's going to get them excited about like, well, what's it going to be like to actually work with them?
Love it. Andrew says, my competition does one-page quotes. People will only see the number. You step over your value. Great way to end. Love it. Great way to end the session. We've already reached time. So we will be picking a winner. For those who've asked questions that we weren't able to get to, we will personally answer them after the show. So thanks everyone for joining us. But before we go, just want to remind everyone to get the latest state of proposals with way more tips on how to close more deals with a great proposal. Go to proposify.com/state of proposals to get your latest and greatest state of proposals. We also added the link in the comment section, so feel free to just click on that to get access to the latest state of proposals. But we do have a winner. Do we have a prize wheel, Hunter?
We do have a prize wheel.
We will pick a winner. One of 3 Proposify swag packs.
All right, here we go.
First winner, drum roll. We've got Andrew. Nice. So Andrew wins one. Woo-hoo! Next. Mike McCormick. Nice.
Big Mike.
I have to give one to Heidi no matter what. Because she asked amazing questions today. Tiffany, woohoo! Tiffany also gets a swag pack. So we will comment in the comment section. You can DM or actually send an email to marketers@proposify.com. We will send you a swag pack automatically. And Heidi, I'm going to add you to the list, Heidi Wilson, because you just added so much value with some of the questions. So thanks everyone for joining us. We are back with live closing show lives until May 31st. Join us next week. We have another amazing guest. And I actually don't have who it is, but I will post it in the chat later today. So thanks everyone for joining us. Have a great day. See you at the next closing show live. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.